Hi, caregivers. I'm Donna Jackson, the adult caregivers coach. And today we have an amazing segment for you. As you know, we love to bring experts who can help us navigate this really challenging and weighty season of caregiving for our elderly loved ones. Today, our segment is entitled Bless Your Heart, a cardiologist blueprint for caregivers. And today we have with us Dr. Cliff Morris. Hi, Dr. Cliff.
Hello, Donna. I'm so excited, and I love what you do. I follow you, and I forward your stuff onto my social media, and because I know the people I deal with on a day-to-day basis need to hear what you have to say. I'm hoping that everybody will be leaning forward with fervent anticipation.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm so glad that you are with us today, and we are going to dive deep into how your practice and the folks that you see on a daily basis, how we can provide context for their caregivers, because as you know, that is our focal in this space. So tell the listening audience about your practice, what you do, what you specialize, and then we can just jump into the conversation.
I'm Dr. Cliff Morris. I'm a board certified cardiologist, but I'm also double board certified in lifestyle medicine. I am a preventative cardiologist and a lifestyle medicine practitioner. I have a state-of-the-art cardiology practice here in Chester, Virginia, the Morris Cardiovascular Risk Reduction Center. And like I said, we're a state-of-the-art practice, but our main emphasis is to change behavior through evidence-based medicine, fitness, and lifestyle medicine. And we've been going now for the last 14 years. We've had a total of, we're coming up on 15,000 patients. And so I think I know a little bit about caregiving, but also I've seen a lot of caregivers come through with their patients. And so this is for you guys, the caregivers. And this becomes a very important part of what I do here also.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Cliff. So we're going to just jump right in, especially in light of the fact that a lot of your clients are, accompanied by their caregiver when they come to see you. So have you ever seen the caregiver miss some signs in themselves because they were so focused on that loved one they're caring for?
Yeah, I see that only every day. Just every day, literally. I have my now here at Morris Cardio, we call them cousins. We call them cousins. Right? So we have the cousins come in and their caregivers come in, and I'm constantly addressing the caregiver. After I take care of the patient, I'll look over the caregiver and go, okay, now are you taking care of you? Because if you don't give yourself care, you have nothing to give to the person you're taking care of. How can you? You haven't given it to yourself first. What do you have left? And when that happens, of course, you start to feel like, when am I going to get cared for? What am I doing here? And you can even start to feel a resentment that can come out in a negative way in the future. Like, when is it going to have time for me? So I see it every day, all day, and it's very important.
And what's the reality? What is their reality in that? So, a lot of times that caregiver is still working full time, may or may not be raising children or grandchildren, and may have a spouse, all the things, and now caring for a parent or a grandparent, or even a spouse themselves, right? So what's the reality of the receptiveness of what you're telling them? Like, oh, you have to take care of yourself. And they're thinking, I have a gazillion things to do. Everybody's pulling on me. There are no more hours in my day. So how do you kind of give them practical ways of taking care of themselves in the midst of this really tough journey?
It always, whenever I have a caregiver bringing in a patient, my obligation obviously first is with the patient or our cousin, okay? And to be sure that patient is okay. But I'm always actively bringing the caregiver into the conversation. I call them the patient advocate. And this could be a family member or it could be a non-family member. It could be a church member. I mean, I've had people come in and they have no one, but the neighbor across the street. And, they'll say, the person will be sitting in the room and I say, how'd you get here? It's obvious that this patient can't drive. But how'd you get here today? Oh, yeah, the neighbor across the street brought me over. I said, well, do you think it'd be okay if I invite the neighbor in? Is that okay with you? I mean, I'm here for you, but does the neighbor know you that well? And would I be able to bring him in? And if they say yes, I'll always bring the neighbor or the caregiver in and try to, because I get a lot more information when the caregiver's there than when the patient is there. Many times the patient may not be aware of symptoms that they're having. And I ask them, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great, Dr. Morris. That's been great. The caregiver go, wait a minute. Wait, no, you're not. Don't you remember just yesterday you were complaining that, you had this pain in your chest and it's throbbing in your back? Oh, yeah. So much of what happens in the patient's world is in the patient's world, and a caregiver is somebody that sits on the outside looking in and can give a different perspective. And many times that different perspective shines a whole new light on the situation. So I always look forward to the caregiver coming in. And then in the interchange, I can eventually ask the caregiver, okay, and especially if I see a little crack, I'm like, so how are you doing? And have you been checked lately? And sometimes it catches them like a little off guard, like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know this was about me. And of course, it's about you because it affects the patient. Excuse me. Yeah. So, I see this often, and I love it when I can bring the caregivers into the conversation.
That is, and it's so needed. And I guess that's that classic white coat syndrome, that when they show up, everything's perfect.
Yeah. Right.
Everybody,
exactly.
no symptoms.
Right. Yeah. And I always encourage people to please bring in somebody with them, so that person can listen in. So much happens during our interview that it just kind of goes completely over the patient's head. Depends on how sick they are. Depends on how many other things they have going on. And so to have somebody objectively looking on the outside in is priceless.
Yeah. And so that kind of begs a couple of questions from my perspective. One is, I love that you are emphasizing their care team, because one of the things I find with my caregivers is a lot of them believe that they are the sole caregiver. And I tell them over and over, there is no such thing as a sole caregiver. You may be primary, but there is always someone in your ecosystem that can render support, aid, care, a drive to the doctor, a drive to Dr. Cliff, even the mailman, believe it or not, if there was an emergency, someone who is going to show up with some regularity, and you can rely on them in some way, shape, or form. So I love that you kind of show them that you have a care team. You're not alone, even though you didn't have anybody else to drive you in, not a family member, but you have a support. So the question that it begs for me is HIPAA. So how does HIPAA come into this when it is a neighbor, right? Or even if it's a family member? What is the process or the procedure that allows you to divulge their medical discussion history that's involved there with a person who's not just a patient?
First and foremost, I just have to ask the patient, is it okay? I always ask them, because I don't assume that their wife, sometimes in that situation, their spouse, I don't make an assumption that they want their spouse in the room at the same time. So I always ask them, okay, is it okay if your husband comes in? Is it okay if your wife? Is it okay if your neighbor comes in? And if the spouse says, oh gosh, yeah, and I can get a general sense of if they are, and they'll, they know everything anyway. So, and so when I get that okay, then I'm always going to invite a second party or third, even fourth party in. And then if there's always little things, for instance, the spouse may tell me something very personal. I mean, the patient may tell me something really personal. And I have to make a general call at that point whether I think it's appropriate for this other person to hear that information. That comes up sometimes, but most times it's an open book. And there have been times when I have wanted to ask a question, and I'll say to the patient, listen, okay, this is not a personal question. This is purely medical. But is it okay if this person, hears everything we're doing? And if they say, if I even get a hint that they feel uncomfortable, then I won't go that path. There's always different ways of doing it. Being a caregiver myself and being a physician, I have to be able to detect energy. I'm a very energetic person. And if I detect even the slightest bit of hesitation or in their body language, you have to read body language. And I can tell you that if I have a patient and I'm talking to them and I ask them a question and I see them do like this and they fold their arms, okay, yes, Dr. Morris, sure, that'll be okay. That's not okay, because they're covering their hearts. And when they're covering their heart like that, they're protecting themselves, as opposed to when they're speaking to you and they're open like this and their arms are down and they're relaxed and they're opening their heart to you. That's them telling you that it's okay. So also, if I have a patient and I say, I'd like to talk with you about this, and you have your caregiver in the room. Is it okay if we do that? And they go, well, sure. But then they go, yeah. So what this means is that they're holding back something, and because they're literally holding it in, okay. And that's a clue to me. Like, wait a minute, something's going on here. So that body language is very subtle and it's important.
That is huge, Dr. Cliff. My heart is just happy to hear that these little things, they're not little. And how you are incorporating this in your practice, right?
Yeah. It is something when, especially when I ask them. I mean, I'll say, can we talk about this? And I go, sure. And they'll go like this. I go, did you have something? Did you want to add something? And they'll go, oh, well, I mean, maybe we should do something differently, or so. You know what I mean? It's really it catches them off guard. But nearly 90% of the time, when I see people doing this, I'll always ask them, did you have something that you want to add, or did you want to say something? And like every time they'll be like, yeah, I did want to say something. Yeah. So for you at home, anybody that does this while you're talking to them, ask them the question. You'll catch them off guard, but it works.
Man, that is so good. Okay, so you make me think of another question here. Mm-hmm. Now, I think I know the answer, but I want the listeners to hear this from you. That number one is there's not the need to sign all of these HIPAA disclosures and disclaimers. It simply is the doctor asking the patient, primary, if it's okay, and them giving consent or not, or withholding. So that's really good. I know there are forms, but it can be as simple as the question. So that's good information.
Right.
The second thing that I want to ask here is, now, what if there is a spouse involved and whatever is going on with your patient is something that spouse should know? Is there anything, either in legally or that you can incorporate in your practice to encourage that patient to let the spouse know? Like, I don't think you can make them, but how do you handle that? Because I have seen and have experienced the patient holding back and not disclosing some really important stuff from the spouse. How do you handle that?
That can be awkward. It can be
Yeah.
very awkward, honestly. And again, trying to feel into the situation, trying to get a general sense of the body language of both the spouse, and if there's obvious tension going on in the room, you know, I'll know when to back up or whether to press forward. You know, it always comes down to my relationship, my obligation, and my contract, if you will, is with that patient. So whether I think the spouse needs to know it or not, you know, I have to be sure that the patient is okay with that spouse. And sometimes I may say, well, listen, we need to pick this up a little later. Probably you two need to talk about this more, and we can come back to this later. And if there are other things that you need to talk about, maybe we can do that at a later time, or you know, just kind of skirt around it a little bit if I see that it's an awkward situation. I get this a lot. Because spouses come in and they want to give information they feel is going to be helpful. They feel like their reality is pertinent to what's going on, to why this patient has pain in their chest. And many times that information is very important. It makes it breaks it the way, the direction in which I go sometimes. And so it's all the information is important, but my obligation is always to the patient. And if I feel it would make me feel terrible if I ever, and so far I haven't so far, but if I ever had a patient that came back to me or called me later and says, Dr. Morris, you should not have told them. I wish you had not told them that. You know, so I think, you know, after practicing 30 years, I've kind of got a general sense of the things that I should be talking about versus not talking about.
Yeah.
And I try to respect that and be, you know, I think it's all about the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Cliff, you know, I talk to my caregivers all the time about this season of caring, this season of caregiving for their senior, whether that's a parent, grandparent, or the spouse, involves the entire history of their relationship. Like that comes into full focus now.
Yep.
And it's complex, right? Your entire history is complex. And so that caregivers, I want you to understand that this is not something you haven't been here before, or you haven't been here with this person before. And a lot of times we're trying to navigate spaces that it's unfamiliar territory. The person might not be unfamiliar, but the scenario is. And that's where I come in and coach you through your very specific situations. And they vary. I mean, wildly, they vary. So Dr. Cliff, you know, when we're talking about heart health, how can the caregivers differentiate between their loved one having a bad day or an actual cardiac emergency?
I think a simple answer to that is a bad day comes and goes. A cardiac situation builds and continues. Wow. And if you see a day where, the patient is, having shortness of breath and it just happened for an instant, or maybe not even an instant, like 20 or 30 minutes, you always have to put into context what led up to that. And if it's something that just lasted for 20, 30 minutes, and then, ask them, well, how'd you do the rest of the week? Oh, I was fine. I went and I walked my usual 3 miles, but that episode really had me concerned versus, I had this symptom and it happened the day before, and it seems to be happening with greater frequency. It seems to be presenting in different ways. And now my legs are swollen and I don't feel myself. And I just know something's wrong and it just seems to be getting worse. Then that tells me that it's more like something medically that we need to address. So that's the basic answer is something that that is not real, something that's not real cardiac in nature, it's just going to kind of come and go. But something that's escalating, that requires direct attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's good information
Yeah.
right there. Are there any like subtle symptoms that a lot of caregivers might gloss over or miss
Mm-hmm.
that really need, more attention?
Yeah, I think I can think of three. So the heart disease or the heart, it tries to whisper to you when there are problems. It has problems in little whispers, and many times we are so wrapped up in our day-to-day lives that it just goes completely past us. But shortness of breath obviously is one of them, and that could be from a whole host of reasons. But certainly, if there's breathing difficulty that's different than the usual, that's a sign. That's a sign that something's off. And that can be very complex because you have patients with asthma, you have patients with with heart disease and congestive heart failure. Depends on the season. At the season, we have a lot of people, including myself, that have sinus congestion and that kind of thing. And this is very common this time of year. I get people with shortness of breath, but if there's something that is out of the norm for that person in terms of shortness of breath, that's one clue. A second clue is if they start noticing just fatigue that is out of the normal. Now, we get a lot of fatigue, and it happens for different reasons. Most of the patients, when they come and see me, are on a ton of different medications that can lead to that. And fatigue in general can be a very vague topic. We could do hundreds and hundreds of dollars of testing and sometimes not come up with what causes somebody to be fatigued. But fatigue that is unusual, and that's also a kind of a yellow flag. And then finally, if you start seeing swelling, and that could be swelling in the legs, most times swelling in the lower extremities is usually gravity dependent. So if you start seeing your feet swelling, ankle swelling, that's unusual, then that can be an early sign that something needs to be addressed also. We have smartwatch technology now. I have my little smartwatch on right here. And sometimes this technology can give us little clues also. And so on my particular watch, there's something known as heart rate variability. And that is basically how well your heart is able to respond to different circumstances. For instance, if you are just sitting down and you're nice and calm and nothing's going on, your heart should slow down appropriately. If you speed up, and start walking around, your heart should speed up appropriately. And the moment you sit down, your heart rate should come down very nicely in a certain time period. But if you, and that means you have good heart rate variability, it's adequate. Think of it as, if your heart is in different clubs, you want, and it goes into a nice mellow club, you want the heart to be able to just calm down when it needs to. But if it's going to an exciting disco kind of thing, you want the heart to be able to go up here and do the thing, So you want it to be able to respond appropriately. If somebody's heart is responding inappropriately, i.e., they are, they're doing something, walking or something, whatever, and then they sit down and have a rest, but their heart rate is staying up there, and it's not responding appropriately, that's a little whisper. That's a whisper. And so knowing these things ahead of time, that's the reason why this conversation is so important. I'm glad you asked the question.
Yeah. Oh, that's something. You mentioned congestive heart failure. Can you just briefly tell us what's the difference between congestive heart failure and congenital heart disease? I don't know if it's even heart failure or is it heart disease. I'm not even sure, but those two words kind of I hear around heart discussions.
Right. Okay. Well, anything that is congenital is something you're born with. And so usually that kind of thing, and a very small thing that's congenital is that, you hear little small holes in the heart that produce murmurs. And many people over a period of time, that little hole in the heart, usually it's between the two top chambers known as the atrium. over a period of time, that little hole can eventually close. And in most cases, it doesn't cause people any symptoms whatsoever. That's a congenital thing they were born with. And where during the embryologic phase, that hole in the heart is there when you're in the womb. And the moment you come out, magically somehow, and the umbilical cord is cut, this little flap of skin just pops over top of the hole and closes it up. I mean, it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. And in a small percentage of people, that hole does not close completely. And so that's a congenital situation as opposed to, and that's congenital heart disease, as opposed to congestive heart failure. What that is that through various means, the heart is unable to keep up with the body's demands. And so as a result of that, for instance, the heart may be too thick and too strong, but too thick from high blood pressure over a long period of time. And when the body is now trying to do something like, trying to move, or you're trying to walk, the heart is very stiff. It won't relax. Blood has a tendency to back up into the lungs instead of going forward into the body. And that person becomes short of breath much quicker than they used to. And those can be signs of early congestive heart failure, where the congestion is backing up from the heart back into the lungs, into the rest of the body. The swelling of the legs, swelling of the abdomen. These are all things that can be associated with congestive heart failure. So anytime the heart is not able to properly supply the body with what it needs at the appropriate time and is overwhelmed, that's what we call congestive heart failure.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, a couple more questions here. This is really good. Caregivers, I hope this is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And just certain things that you want to keep an eye on as your loved one is aging, not necessarily ailing, but just natural aging. So that leads me to a question of, how does living well with heart disease, what does that look like?
There are places known in this world where people live to 100 years old, and they call them the blue zones. Blue zones like Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Costa Rica. They're living into their hundreds despite medical issues, and they're much more resilient. So how do you live well with heart disease? It all depends on what your lifestyle is like. Let's suppose that you have heart disease, and you're getting proper sleep, you're getting proper nutrition, you have adequate support systems around you, you are connected to your community, you are connected to your family outside the hospital, you haven't walled yourself off. Connection is medicine. And one of the things that I get worried about when I see a patient or a caregiver starting to isolate. Okay, we know that smoking is equivalent. That isolation and loneliness for the caregiver and the patient is equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It has that impact on the body. So if you have heart disease and you're isolating and you have loneliness, and I ask you, are you smoking? You go, no, I don't do that. But if you got loneliness, you're smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This raises your cortisol levels, and it lowers your heart rate variability, and your body can't compensate as well. And you're more likely to wind up in the hospital than somebody that lives in a blue zone, who has connection to a community, who has and what they call their tribe. Their tribe is their group of friends and family around them who have like-minded kind of ideologies, and they're kind of going together. Those folks are going to be more likely not to need hospitalization. Number one, because they have connection, they have somebody to reach out to, and they have somebody that they know cares versus them, and they don't feel like they have to be there alone. All of those things help to lower cortisol, to lower the sympathetic drive, what we call the sympathetic or fight or flight mode. And it gives them more of an opportunity to be in what we call the parasympathetic, which is the calm mood, the calm thing that kind of calms the inner calm. And people with heart disease do much better with a sense of inner calm and inner peace than someone who is wrapped up in the chaos of the day and can't really handle that real well. So that's when you look at these people in the blue zones, even with all of that, they have family problems, they have kids that are, in trouble. They have, they're smoking now more than ever in history. They have stress on their jobs and stuff, but they seem to be more resilient. And despite all of these things, and they did a study looking at these areas, and they would discover 9 key principles. This is Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, the Nicoya Peninsula, which is Ikaria. No, I'm sorry. What's the other name for the Nicoya Peninsula? Anyway, it'll come to me. They did a study, and they said, what's the secret sauce? Why are these people living so long? Why are they so resilient?
Yeah.
And they discovered 9 key principles, and they call them the Blue Zone Power 9. So if you've got Blue Zone Power 9 in your life, then you're going to be more resilient with heart disease or really any medical issue, as far as I'm concerned. And I would strongly recommend everybody to look into the Blue Zone Power 9.
Excellent. Wow. So one of the things you mentioned, which is, it kind of blows my mind now, because all of these years since me learning about blue zones, I thought that these were areas in the world where these people were not sick, that the sickness and disease wasn't even in these communities. But listen to how powerful what Dr. Cliff just told us. In spite of sickness and disease that still shows up in these zones, because of these Power 9 principles, guidelines, it is experienced quite differently. And longevity is not impacted. That is like mind-boggling.
Yeah. You know what it's called? It's called epigenetics. And what epigenetics is when your environment impacts your genetics, or your environment impacts your outcome. So let's suppose we take 2 twins, and here they are, and they have the identical DNA, right? All right. So we know their genetics is identical. It's identical twins. You take one twin and you put that twin over here in the city, near the power plant, and you take this other twin and you move them out in the country, where there's none of the ills of the city. You're not near a power plant. Which twin is more likely to get cancer first?
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be the twin over in the city, near the power plant. Same genetics, different environment. And so we know that our environment definitely impacts our genetics. And it's not only our external environment, but it's our internal environment. It is the toxic thoughts that we have that come into our brains every day, particularly for caregivers. Yeah. And they may not be aware of it, but when they are spending all of their time just continually taking care of others, and that may not be just one person, it could be several others, because that's what caregivers do. Yeah. It's so much easier for a caregiver to take care of other people than to take care of themselves. Yes. Okay. So they find themselves doing that. They silently would be asking, when is it my turn? I'm so tired. When am I going to have time for me? And then when somebody else or some other situation comes into their purview or to their space, it's like, well, what do you want? Why? Versus when you're taking care of yourself first and feel yourself so full of love and self-care, now it gushes out of you and is spilling from you onto everybody around you. Then when somebody comes into a new situation, a new person comes into your situation, it's like, okay, yes, how can I help you? Oh, yes, how can I help you? Yes, how can I help you? Because I've given myself so much self-care. I've got a lot to give to everyone. And it builds from the inside. It's kind of the self-sustaining thing that takes work to try to do this. but that person is going to be more resilient. And that's what you find in these people in the blue zones. They have this built in, and the thing is, they didn't read anything about the blue zones.
Exactly.
They just live this way.
Create.
Yeah, it's just they were raised this way. You ask them, how are you guys doing this? Well, my parents did this, and their parents did this. They live to 100, but they're not trying to live to 100. They just do.
Yes. Wow.
As opposed to us, where we've got to look it up and we got to research and read all about it. And now we've got to try and incorporate this into our lives. That's the power of these principles, and that's the reason I want to encourage everybody, caregivers particularly, to please look into these principles. It really can be a lifesaver.
Yes, that's something. You know, guys, I want to kind of drill down on something Dr. Cliff mentioned. He's talking about extreme self-care, but I want you to be really careful with how you're hearing that, how you are receiving that, because a lot of people are now kind of on the extreme of feeling that, oh, all of this self-care talk is just toxic and it's selfish. And, you know, now we're going, you know, it's the focus on self and all those types of things. So I want to be sure that the way you're hearing this is not in that vein, but it is in the vein of self-love. It's loving yourself. And you can't love someone else unless and until you love yourself. And what that looks like and how you incorporate that into your caregiving is going to be individual and unique. But one of the things I remind my caregivers all the time is you can have access to so much information and you're on information overload. And it's great information. The challenge and the gap that I fill in my coaching is actually helping you as the caregiver practically apply all of this information that you're receiving into your very specific and unique caregiving journey. You can sit in and listen to as many podcasts. This podcast, it's fabulous. It's excellent information. You can listen to them all day long.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the tools, and I help you build the systems to incorporate this, whether that's in bite-sized chunks or how much that your capacity can hold to incorporate and implement this into your daily life, you are never going to be able to do it. And with all your carrying, you need a coach who can help you, can guide you through that. So we're going to begin our wrap up, but this has been phenomenal and fantastic. You know, as a caregiver, how critical do you think is the time gap between when symptoms first appear and then you as the cardiologist provide that diagnosis? That gap, how critical is that gap for that caregiver to keep an eye on?
That gap is absolutely critical, and it occurs in whispers. Though the heart disease is a chronic disease. This is not something that just springs up. You may think that it springs up. You think you're doing fine, and all of a sudden you have a bad day, and you develop all this pain in your chest and shortness of breath. That heart, and we find out you have 3-vessel coronary disease, and you need bypass surgery. I mean, I've got people that come in and say, Dr. Morris, I was fine until I went to the doctor. and now I've got high blood pressure, I've got diabetes, I've got high cholesterol, and I'm like, no, Miss Jones, Mr. Jones, you've had this for years. You just never went to get help about this and now here you are in the hospital and we're bringing all this stuff out, but it's chronic. So it's so important for us to listen to those whispers that the heart is trying to give us. One of the most important that I want to be sure that our caregivers do is isolation. And then when they find that the patient is isolating and then the caregiver is also isolating, that's one of the worst things that can possibly happen, because when you are isolated, then the weight of the world is much more difficult than when you are connected. Mm-hmm. And the heart is not just a pump. It perceives all of this. It perceives, there's something known as cardiopsychology. And cardiopsychology is the interplay between the mind and the body and the spirit. And it has impacts on your cardiovascular system, how you perceive the world. So we have to be very careful. This heart's just not a pump. It's a receiving station. It's actually a receiver. And it actually sends out information also. We call this, and we know we can measure this scientifically. It's called an EKG. It emits electrical activity. And it's really fascinating when you see the science that shows that if you take a heart cell and you, from one individual or one body, if you will, and you put it into a little petri dish, and you put some petri dish is just this little thing that has sustaining material for that heart cell to beat on its own. It can beat on its own. So let's suppose, Donna, you and I take my heart cell and I put it in a little petri dish, and we put the little stuff in there in the petri dish, and all of a sudden my heart starts doing a little cliff beat, okay, and my own intrinsic cliff beat. And now let's take your heart cell and we put it into a little petri dish and we sprinkle a little stuff on there, and all of a sudden it starts beating spontaneously, all right, and it's doing a Donna beat. But if you take your heart cell and you put it into my petri dish, over a period of time, those two heart cells start beating together. Oh. So there is a communication between heart cells that goes across space. Isn't that beautiful?
That is fantastic.
And so when I hug you or when I hug somebody, we're bringing our hearts closer. There's a conversation going. And that conversation is important for us to realize. And even when we're separated and we're apart, there's scientific and quantum principles that support this kind of thing. So the heart is a powerful organ, and we need to realize it more than just something that's pumping blood throughout the body. It's actually a receiver, and it needs to be taken good care of, mentally as well as physically.
Dr. Cliff, oh my gosh, so many thoughts are just flying through my head. I just want to just list them off really quickly before I forget them. This is a saying that I heard one of my pastors say years ago, and I've never forgotten it, and I repeat it lots of times. At the heart of every matter is a matter of the heart.
You better believe it. Absolutely.
I mean, we have to check our hearts. Absolutely. Check your heart. When you come to anything that you're doing, before you speak, before you respond, check your heart, because the motive is in there. It's in there, right?
Absolutely.
You said something about the isolation and caregivers. I know this is going to resonate with a lot of you. Dr. Cliff, how do we practically guide our caregivers when certain generations are more prone to this than others? The boomers and the greatest generation. They don't want anybody in their house that they don't know. And they only want to receive care from that caregiver. So they have put the entire weight of the season on this one person.
Yeah.
And the one person doesn't want to disappoint mama, doesn't want to disappoint daddy. But it's unbearable. It's unreasonable.
Right.
And I have a way that I help and address this with my caregivers, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What is some advice that we can give the caregivers when that's the situation? Who's in charge?
Yeah, I see this all the time also, where this, first of all, the caregiver usually, you could have 10 brothers and sisters, but usually there's just one who is doing the brunt of the work, so that, in terms of taking care of the caregiver. And excuse me. And as this relationship continues to evolve, more and more responsibility is weighted upon this one person. So I would say, and if that one person, the caregiver, is noticing that things are kind of closing in on them, I would take opportunities to try and love is the most powerful force on the planet. And so sometimes what caregivers have a tendency to do is, when that loved one is really relying on them, then they'll become the complete envelope for this loved one. I'll do it for you. You sit, I'll do it. And I find that that's not the best thing to do under the circumstances. I would allow that instead of, for instance, you go to the person you're taking care of, and you say, you should really move around some more. You should go outside for walks. I mean, why don't you do that? Instead, how about, can we go out on a walk? Can we go out on a walk? Yes. And what does this do? Both the patient and the caregiver now are going outside in nature. Nature heals. Getting that sunlight on your skin produces vitamin D and produces serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone for both the caregiver and the patient. So now both is a win-win. Instead of, you need to really stop drinking so many of those sodas. You need to eat more healthfully. It's like, how about if you and I fix a meal together? How about if you and I fix a healthy meal? And we don't have to call it a healthy meal. It's, how about if you and I just fix a meal together? Let's do it together tonight. And in that time period, you can perhaps do some substitutions. Okay, instead of white rice, maybe we can try some brown rice or some quinoa. I mean, what do you think? And that creative time together, and that gives you opportunities to perhaps invite another person into the space. But it also creates a memory. And, when you create something and it tastes great, now you've got something positive that's going on in that person's life, and you start to open that space a little bit more. So, there are opportunities to you have to be very creative, though. And when it can start to barrel in on you, we lose our creativity. We get used to the same old thing every single day. And then we get comfortable with the same old thing, every day. And I tell folks, comfort is not a good thing. When we get too comfortable, if this room is comfortable, I won't do anything. I'll just sit in here. But let it get cold in here, I have to do something, right? Yes. If it gets too hot in here, I've got to go open the door. I have to do something. Yeah. So I try to tell my patients, never find yourself comfortable, really just absolutely comfortable. You always want to be a little uncomfortable, because that's when you'll do something different to make something happen. Your mind cuts on. Your creativity cuts on. And, everyone will be in a situation where it's too uncomfortable, right? That's too much stress. But sitting back and just, letting people do things and that kind of thing, it creates a problem. And then that person, that the caregiver, is more burden on them. And of course, the person they're taking care of, their capacity starts to shrink down. And they lose their dignity, and they lose their respect, and they get weaker physically. They get weaker mentally. Yeah. And that lends to a whole nother group of problems. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, we could go on for another hour or so, but we're going to wrap, because we got to bring you back at some point. There's so many other tributaries that your responses have just sent me off in so many different areas, but I want to try to keep it contained here. So, earlier toward the beginning of this segment, you said that you call your patients your cousins, and you all, for full transparency, this really is my cousin. It's my cousin. And I've just been so excited to have him come on and talk to us today, and just provide another expert's level of support for us caregivers in this space. And before we wrap, we're going to find out what Dr. Cliff is up to, and some of the programs he's rolling out in his practice, and is is actually wants to share with us here. But before we do, there is an amazing fun fact that I just love to tell. So I don't even know if I should tell it or if Dr. Cliff should tell it. Dr. Cliff, I want you to tell this fun fact.
Yeah, this always precedes me wherever I go. I do a lot of public speaking, and always the word gets out that there's some guy named Michael Jordan. Nobody's ever heard of this guy. He's out there, a guy from Wilmington, and he's done a few things out there, and so nobody's really heard much about him. But back in '85, I graduated from UNC in 1985, and I had the wonderful opportunity of playing basketball for Coach Dean Smith for the University of Tar Heels, the actual University of Tar Heels basketball team. And it just so happened that Michael Jordan and we were in the same class, and we were supposed to graduate together. And so, yes, I played basketball with Michael Jordan. However, I like to make sure people get this correct. I didn't play basketball with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan played basketball with me.
That's right. Okay. Okay. Starting five, right?
There you go. And so that's my little claim to fame. And of course, I joke with that because he, in my opinion, there's no doubt about this. He is the GOAT. We don't have to have a conversation.
That's right.
Right? He is absolutely the GOAT. But I take credit for all of that, everything he's ever done, because of me in practice every day. That's the reason why he is so good. Okay, so, but yeah, I take a lot of pride in that. I'm a former UNC basketball player. The whole UNC tradition is something I'm very proud of. I pinch myself every day that I can even be in the same sentence with Michael Jordan and Kenny Smith and Brad Daugherty and Sam Perkins and all these great Carolina basketball players. How this happened to me, I'll never know. I always thank my mom, who was the first Black female All-American basketball player, Missouri Morris, otherwise known as Missouri Arledge. Back in the day, they called her Big Mo. You can Google her. You can. She's Googleable. But she got her All-American honors back when she was at Philander Smith, and later went on down to Tuskegee. And instilled in me the drive that I have when you see a Black woman at that time period become the first in her field. She's in the North Carolina Hall of Fame, the Sports Hall of Fame there, and she went against insurmountable odds. As it always comes down to the women, right? who are just strong beyond belief. So it goes past Michael Jordan. It certainly goes back to my mom, and I thank her for all she's done. She's passed on, but I'm trying to move forward. My mom and my dad, Captain Willis C. Morris, he was a B-52 bomber in the Air Force, and I'm trying to move this thing forward for all of them. And that's my little claim to fame.
That is, and it's fabulous. And your dad was a Tuskegee Airman.
Yes, he was. Yeah. Well, he wasn't one of the actual Tuskegee Airmen, but he was during that time period. I want to make sure we distinguish that.
Okay.
We would not be able to find him under the Tuskegee Airmen.
Okay.
Where he was in relation to the Airmen, I'm not exactly sure whether the Airmen were before him. I think the Airmen were before him.
Yes.
But he trained at the same institute that all these airmen performed in. And my sister Karen actually later went down and also became a pilot through the Tuskegee program, and had she set some important, impressive records there also. So my mom and my sister, Dr. Terry Morris, she has a PhD in some kind of molecular thing that she does, and she runs a wonderful organization, Vets to Vets United in Durham, right there with you. So my mom did pretty good. I mean, she did
pretty good. Y'all, my cousins are the bomb. Okay. I am so excited that my cousins are celebrated throughout the world. And I love you so much for coming on, Dr. Cliff. We call him affectionately Cliffy.
That's right.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. And So finally, tell us what you're working on, what people can connect with you, if people can come to your practice and engage. How can we do that?
Okay, so my practice is in Chester, Virginia. I'm licensed in Virginia, so I can only see people here in my office, but we have people coming from all over the world. As I said, we're a state-of-the-art cardiology practice. We do the nuclear medicine and practical cardiology, stress testing, the whole deal. But our emphasis is really to change behavior. We have fashioned our whole practice around these Blue Zone Power 9 principles. And as a result of that, our patients are actually coming off of their blood pressure and diabetic medicine. It's really exciting. And at my front door, and actually I have it right here, this is an empty pill bottle container of people that we've gotten off of their blood pressure and diabetic medicine by engaging these Blue Zone Power 9 principles. It is powerful. We have over 500 empty pill bottles.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Off of their medicine. And so that's kind of what we do. And the thing we're doing in the community now that I'm really excited about is that currently the organization known as the Blue Zone LLC, it's an organization that was founded by Dan Buettner. They go to different cities across the country that want to become Blue Zones. And Blue Zones are places where basically it makes it easier for everyone to get healthier, right? So every city wants to become a Blue Zone. And but it takes quite a while to do it, and it's very arduous. We are now on the verge of creating the very first Blue Zone in the state of Virginia, right in Hopewell, Virginia. Wow. And so I've created a nonprofit, the Healthy Hopewell Coalition. And we're a group of people who are invested in bringing this to fruition. And I'm just as excited as I can possibly be to bring this to this area. It's going to happen. And anybody that's interested can reach me at morriscardio.com. And we also have a very active Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook and you put in Morris Cardio or Morris Cardiovascular Risk Reduction Center, we pop up to the top. But I guess it's probably best to reach me through the website, morriscardio.com. And my lovely wife, Fran, is my office manager there. And you can just ask to speak to Fran. The number is area code 804-530-1044, area code 804-530-1044. And ask to speak to Fran, and she'd be happy to get you all connected and get you involved out in the community. It's very important to me. It's a part of my purpose. It's a part of my ikigai, which we know in the Blue Zone lingo. That means your purpose. You're reaching for getting up every morning, and it gets me up every morning. I have an extremely busy practice, but I'm very fortunate. And when you have purpose in your life, you actually add an extra 4 years to your life. And that's an important part of living in these Blue Zones. They have purpose. They have a reason to get up every day. I have a beautiful staff here. I've got a gym in my office. No doctor's done this in this area before. So a cardiology practice and a gym merged together where people are kind of back and forth. We have patients that go into the gym, people in the gym, they wind up as patients. It's a beautiful thing. And now 14,000 plus patients strong. My goal is to become a billionaire, and my definition of billionaire is I want to help 1 billion people. So that's it. However, I can't do that if I don't take care of me first. Yes. And I do want to address that with you. You mentioned that some people feel that, this could be selfish. It can be, how self-centered. How can I take care of me first? Mm-hmm. The analogy I like to think about is if you and I are on a rope together and we're hanging up high in the air and we're both hanging onto this rope for dear life. I want to take care of myself. I mean, it's not that my health is any better than yours or my life is any more important than yours and I'm going to kick you off the rope, right? Mm-hmm. But I want to take care of myself and become so strong that I can lift you and hold you on that rope myself. Wow. But in order for me to hold you on that rope and to be of service to you, I must be vigilant in taking care of myself, my own strength, eating properly, getting the right amount of sleep, not losing my connection to the community. and be selfish about it in the sense that I want to help a billion people. And the way I do that is I take care of me first. That's my service to the world. It's me first. And that way I can help a billion more people and not wind up in the hospital with a heart attack or stroke. So I want the caregivers out there, you're not being selfish. This is your service. Your service is taking care of you. That's the best way you show your love for for your people. You take care of you first.
Yeah.
And then you can love up on everybody.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that note, that is so beautiful, so beautifully said. Thank you, Dr. Cliff. Thank you so much. We're going to drop all of. Go ahead.
My honor, cousin.
Yes. We're going to drop the link to all of your websites and all the way they can connect with you below.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.